What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking podcast. This week is an interesting, although somewhat disjointed podcast where I spoke to 7 different people all at the same time about how they're using computers, websites, apps, codes, data to make a bunch of useful resources for kayakers. And what we can do as the average non-tech savvy kayaker to help out with that and kind of contribute. I just want to say before we get started with this, that this podcast would not be possible without the backing from my Patreon subscribers. Patreon is a crowdfunding website source where you can chip in a couple of bucks every month. You get to hear the podcast before it comes out in the mainstream, and also get the satisfying, warm feeling of knowing that you helped to keep the lights on and keep this thing happening every month. I really appreciate those people, and I could not do this without them, so thank you very much. If you're interested in becoming one of those Patreon supporters, why not check it out at patreon.com/Seth Ashworth. That is enough of that housekeeping. Hopefully everyone's staying safe and healthy in these crazy COVID-19 times, and I hope we will see you again soon. Peace. What's up? Welcome back to Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking podcast. My name's Seth Ashworth, and today I'm hosting an interesting style, a new style. I don't know if it's going to be something we're going to be doing a lot here, but a conversation about something that I know very little about, which is how information technology or how like IT computers and stuff is currently used in whitewater kayaking, how it's useful for whitewater kayakers, and what we can do to help further this useful resource that maybe we didn't all know existed or didn't know how much was existing. I'm joined by 7 different people, I think, today. So if you guys want to go around and introduce yourself and where you're from and what your resources or what your background in this whole IT for paddlers thing is. I don't know. Whoever wants to start first can go ahead.
I can start. Hello, I'm Jonathon. So I do a bunch of Scottish projects to cover paddling in Scotland, and it started off with me investigating a non-technical project, which was the Andy Jackson Fund for Access. So there was a charity that collected money and did good works on rivers to rebuild riverbanks, that kind of thing, but it had no internet presence. So I got in touch with them and I offered to make them a website, and from making that more public, I then got asked if I wanted to help out with the Scottish Whitewater Guidebook. So the physical book in Scotland, we're really lucky that this guy Andy Jackson, the late Andy Jackson, not to be confused with English Andy Jackson, who's different, not to be confused with the Jackson family who make kayaks in America, but the Scottish Andy Jackson, he pioneered a lot of whitewater paddling, and his works after he died were turned into the Scottish Whitewater Guidebook. So we just revamped that a year ago for the 3rd edition, and that felt really useful and important contribution to paddling. And then I got asked, do I want to refresh the SCA Where's the Water website, which has the gauges from all the rivers that you can paddle in Scotland, calibrated to canoeists. So of course the Environment Agency has a bunch of gauges on rivers. That's great for them to know if there's floods or not, but you need manual calibrations to turn that into whether or not it's good conditions for paddling or not. And so I spent some time rewriting that website and then crowdsourcing the information on whether or not what the levels are for good paddling. And then from there, we've also worked with Mike, who will introduce Whitewater Guide. I want to say you are Mike.
Yeah, hello, I'm Mike Kotiansky. Actually, we are 2 guys working for Whitewater Guide. It's me and Konstantin Kuznetsov. He's the developer. He's the one who is doing the hard job, and I'm the one who is talking more. So Whitewater Guide is an app, and we don't have any connections to any regions, let's say. So we are not based anywhere. The whole idea behind the project is to cover as much whitewater around the globe as possible. I apologize for my accent. It's a Russian accent. We are both from Russia. but it doesn't mean that we focus on Russian whitewater. The idea of getting the contact to the app, it's different, and it depends a lot on the region. One of the examples of cooperation is what we did with Jonathon, with the Scottish Whitewater Guidebook. This is quite a straightforward idea. We are selling the guidebook in the app. So we have this one for Scotland and for a couple other regions. And some other regions are offered for free. And the idea is to slowly starting introducing the Creative Commons license on such regions so that everybody can copy the information. This is just a roundup about the Whitewater Guide, and I think Konstantin wants to add something about the app.
Yeah. So as Mike already told, I'm the developer of Whitewater Guide. I do all the coding, so probably you've heard of Whitewater Guide. We did 2 rounds of crowdfunding. We started in 2016, and I think in 2017 we did a round of crowdfunding on a Russian crowdfunding platform. And recently, this summer, we had a second round on Indiegogo. So we promised several regions and also some features. One of those features is logbook. I'm currently working on adding logbooks to our app, so you can save information on the rivers you ran, when, with whom, at what water level. And we are approaching end of our second crowdfunding round. And what should I say? We have some premium regions in our app because it's really difficult to get information on some regions. Sometimes people have a paper guidebook and they're not going to give this information for free. So we have an agreement with some authors, and that's why some sections are not free in our app, but others are under Creative Commons license. And from my experience, the most difficult part of working with IT in Whitewater community is to make people contribute, even people whom I know well. I'm asking them to describe a couple of rivers, and I ask them again and again, and they never do that. And this is about information, and with actual coding, it's even more difficult because there are few kayakers, and there are even fewer developers among them. And recently, I published first piece of our code as open source. It's an engine that harvests data from different stations that so you can know the water levels, and it's available for free, and you can use it in your project. Or if you want to add your local data source to our app or some other app, you can write some little concrete piece of code, and we'll add it to our app and other apps, so people can see your local levels in a convenient app. I don't know what to add. Someone else?
Hello. I'm sorry. My name is Tim. I am a developer for the River Map project. We are a website that was founded in around 2008, and our main feature is a map, or our main feature was a map that shows you which rivers are paddleable around the European area. So you can look at a glance and see what rivers are running at paddleable levels now. We also have some kind of we have an overlay for the weather, which was kindly donated by a Meteo Blue, who are a local weather company to me. And if you look at that map then, and you look at the weather, you can work out where to go for the weekend. You can work out where to go to Easter if that was ever going to be possible again. Like Konstantin said, it's very difficult to get the information. So originally, when this was started, I imagined that the founding developer, which is me, a guy called Misha, I think he probably expected that paddlers would get very excited and send him information, but it turns out really not to go like that. And you have to run around and try and encourage people to tell you what they know. It isn't really, I think, because paddlers are lazy. It's because they don't really know exactly how to present that information for technology, and also how to present it for other paddlers. So we have a group of about 4 or 5 people who do that kind of organization of data. We call them editors. We have about 1,700 paddleable sections around Europe, mainly in the Alps, some in Germany, some in Norway. And having collected all that data, we started to wonder what was going to happen if we stopped with the project. And to cut a long story short, after much heartache, we decided that we would license our data under an open public license, so that other projects could use it. Also, it wasn't lost if we stopped our project or died or lost the keys or something. So that's become a big interest of ours now. We're completely free. We're totally voluntary, and our big interest is to create a free database so that future projects don't have to start by collecting 1,700 data sections before they can do something useful.
Okay, there's a couple more people on this call, so if you, Tim, you want to line up who's going to speak to us next?
Yeah, so Sergio here. I'm from Italy, and I started working on a project called riverzone.eu. The reason I started this is because, well, in Italy there is a very well known source, which is CK Fiumi, a very old website that was created maybe 15 years ago. But the project is not maintained anymore, and especially the online gauges were starting to deteriorate, not work very well. And I tried, but couldn't really get in touch with the project owners. So I decided to basically start my own. And so that was the beginning of a very regional project for Italian rivers, basically. But then I got to know Tim, so from RiverMap, and we had a lot in common, and we decided basically to merge the two projects. So now it's basically one single project where I contributed all of the Italian sections to RiverMap, and we are basically working together to build this common shared database that other projects can use. And my very utopic goal is to have this single source of truth about rivers in general. The underlying idea is, of course, that the more projects we have, the more likely, if each project works on its own, is to have different data. So maybe I'm looking at the river on River app or on Whitewater Guide or somewhere else, and it's the same river, it's the same section, but I get different data. Maybe I get different calibrations, river levels, I get different grading. So as a user, I'm really confused. Well, who's right? I mean, what information is more up to date? So my goal is to get there. It will be very long. It will take a lot of time, but maybe it will be possible one day. And this is also part of the reason why we are all here, because we are all talking together, all the developers from all of these projects. We're not really on our own. We're having discussions about this. And one other item about this is, for example, like dangers, reporting dangers. That is a big deal, because typically what paddlers do is they run a river, they see a danger, and they post it on Facebook. And that is the worst thing ever that they could do, because that kind of information is very important, and on Facebook it just gets lost somewhere and never recovered. Their friends will know, but that's about it. So if I see a problem on an Italian river and I post it on Facebook, my Italian friends will know, but then the next guy from Germany who comes, he will never know, and he will run into it. So that's why it's very important to report these issues on these whitewater paddling applications. And also the reasons why we're striving to get all of this information to be shared as well, so that if I post a problem about the river on River Map, the same problem shows up on other applications. It's not like that yet, but that's where I would really like to go. So back to River Zone. So
well, why don't we just finish introducing the other people on the call here, Sergio?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
We'll get two feeds.
Yep. So when I was working together with Tim to get this going, and then we needed an administration panel to let contributors, paddlers help us keep all this information up to date. And that's when basically Logan showed up to do just that. So to you, Logan.
I'll take it over from here. Yeah, so I'm somewhat of a late entry compared to the rest of these guys. But I'm originally from the US and have now moved to the Netherlands, where I live, and have done a fair share of paddling here in the Alps and where we can in Germany nearby, despite there being no flowing water in the Netherlands. But I have some experience with front-end web development, and so I thought that maybe I could somehow volunteer or help these guys with their efforts. And so through some chain of online searching, I stumbled upon their group that they have, this paddle IT group, and got in contact first with Toro, and then he connected me with Sergio and Tim. And so I was seeing how I could contribute. And so what we thought was a small task, but is I hope helpful and upcoming challenges to have this administration panel to help the editors to tweak the calibrations and the river sections and the river stations. So, that's about it for me. So pass it on to Toro.
Okay, yeah. So my name's Toro, or my nickname. I live in Switzerland and I run a kayak school, rafting company and shop. And yeah, I've been paddling for some 30 years or more. And as I'm also into computers a little bit, I use stuff like River Map or River App to plan my next trip. And also in my region, I like to contribute back and yeah, about new runs or also about dangers, etc. And so I had the problem, okay, now there are different projects. They are all pretty nice. Which one should I contribute to? Should I contribute to all of them? No, that's not really a clever plan somehow. And so that was one trigger for me to think about. I could do something else. I could try to find out if it's possible to bring these projects together, to make them work together. And I discovered one website in England where the guy who started it, actually at the bottom he wrote all my content is Creative Commons. And yeah, that was kind of like one seed where I saw we should do this in other places as well. And yeah, so I started to contact different projects and try to convince them into what we are doing now more and more. Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of the intro there, and kind of a long-winded intro, or longer than I thought it was going to be. But it really, the first thing I was going to ask is kind of how are you guys using IT and computer technology in paddle sports? And I think you kind of answered that in your introductions. Really, is that if you don't mind me summarizing a little bit, is that you're all working together to try and build online platforms which show river descriptions, river gauges calibrated to like relative levels, and also have a centralized location for to report hazards and dangers and stuff as they come up or as rapids change or whatever. Is that a fair assessment of what you guys are working collaboratively on?
Yeah, I think you could say that. Yeah, there is a few more elements to it that haven't been mentioned yet.
Okay, tell me about them.
Yeah, so or it has been mentioned a little bit. One thing that also bothered me before I started this, what was that it also goes back to the time of paper books, that when people used to write a guidebook, at some point the book is sold out and the information is more or less lost. And the same thing happened with first blogs that came up and like forums, Boater Talk or something. Somehow they got big. People with a lot of enthusiasm started them, and at some point things fade away. And so there is the danger, or it's actually more a harsh reality, that at some point all this information is getting lost. So yeah, and publishing or putting a Creative Commons license, like something for those not so computer, Wikipedia style. You put the information somewhere and you allow everybody to use it commercially or not commercially. So this allows other people like Konstantin and Mike with their quite recent project of Whitewater Guide. It allows them to reuse content that others created. They don't have to explicitly go and ask everybody, hey, can I use your content? Do you maybe want to contribute your content to my project? But if the content is already in a license, everybody can use it. And I guess that's most paddlers, if they put information somewhere on Facebook or wherever, they kind of assume that, yeah, that's free to use for whoever wants it. But if you have something like a guidebook or whatever, if the license is not on there, somebody else cannot just like so take it.
All right, so let's pick up on something that has kind of come up a couple times there, is that like information put out on Facebook is not the most useful thing in the world for all kayakers. And I'm probably guilty of this. I put a lot of information on Facebook when I see a problem on a river, but I hadn't really considered it in the way you guys are talking about it, in that it's possible for that information not to get shared to everyone in the paddling community. What are some ways we can overcome this, or what are some, it should just everyone be on Facebook?
It's really tempting to just post stuff on Facebook because you get instant feedback. People click like, and Facebook's obviously designed to give that instant feedback. People can comment easily, so it feels like it's useful when you're contributing to your relevant Facebook group for the area you're in. But it's transient; it disappears really, really quickly. So if someone posts, "Oh, there's a tree down this river. You've got to make sure you watch out for that." Next day, 2 days later, you can't really find it again. So in Scotland, at least, we have the great SCA, the national governing body, and they collate these things. But of course, if nobody tells them, then it doesn't percolate out. And also my SCA Where's the Water website, I try and watch the Facebook groups, and if someone says there's a problem here, I will add it into there. But I would much prefer that people contacted me directly or were able to say, yeah, please add this. And also when it's fixed, you've got to go, oh, the problem's gone away. That's great to know. It's really good and useful when people can catch up on that.
So I think obviously the idea of a centralized guidebook or a centralized place where all this information comes together makes it makes a lot of sense when we're talking about it. Like in this, we're like sitting around, and you guys are a group of people that can actually make that happen. Yep, go ahead.
I interrupt you. I don't think that any of us would really typify that as what we're actually trying to do. I think we're a bunch of people who have got our own projects. We're all just doing our hobbies, and we kind of nearly agree between us that some of these things are a problem. I don't think we agree at all what we might manage to do to fix them. So we get together and make small advances in some areas, like saying, okay, let's share the information about where a put-in is before we start trying to work out how to deal with messages coming from around the community, or trying to get stuff off Facebook and change people's habits. I mean, we have no chance of competing with Facebook. So this would be a problem I think we all agree with, but none of us wouldn't have any idea at the moment how to solve. And I don't think we all think that a central database is a conceivable ideal, although it's perhaps one of Sergio's goals, but I'm sure there's other people here who think, well, that's plumb crazy and not having nothing to do with it. But I think that we all agree that input from users is a very scarce resource. And when we don't share that, the community doesn't, between the projects, the community doesn't benefit. And possibly one of the reasons the users don't contribute to some of these projects is they realize that it's fragmented and they might as well put it on Facebook. Sorry, that might have been a bit long.
No, that's yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I got just something a little bit more to add to this, which is, yeah, we cannot compete with Facebook, and it's true that most of our projects are dealing with their own problems right now, and the idea of sharing this kind of information is, yeah, it's still just an idea, but this is something that I would recommend users, like paddlers in general, which is, okay, you see a danger, go on, report it on Facebook. But if you're using a Whitewater application, whatever it is, River App, River Map, River Zone, Whitewater Guide, whatever, just please report that danger on your favorite Whitewater application too. Because if you do that, then at some future point, we will be able to collect all this information and put it together. If it is just on Facebook, it's lost, gone forever.
This might be a stupid question or like somewhat leading, but why does everyone want to work on their own projects and not all be working on one project?
Well,
it's easy.
It's historical.
For fun.
And because we all do different things, so in FCA Where's the Water, I recently added in weather. I've got this pollution reports, this scheduled water reports from when there's dams that are releasing, and that's possible to do. I can do that quite quickly because I know where the data is and I know how to solve the problem on my particular platform. It's much harder to do it on somebody else's platform. But the important thing is that we're all talking to each other and we're all sharing ideas on our Paddler IT channel.
Toro, you want to come in on something there? I see you have.
Yeah. I think one answer to this also is it's the same answer as why is there many languages across the world? Because the world is a big distributed place, and people start to do things locally and in different moments in time, and as Jonathon said, with a little bit different ideas where they want to go to, and also because all of us are doing this for fun, and it's most fun if you just start to do whatever you want to do. And then only at a later point, when you grow to a certain size, you start to realize, oh, okay, this is actually also somehow painful work. And then you start to realize, okay, either I give up the project and start a new hobby, or somehow I manage to start working together with other people. And that's when we start to grow together.
Okay, so that's great. That kind of outlines what I'm thinking here. Obviously, from I'm not very technologically savvy, and talking to all of you guys, it seems like you're all working on similar but different things. But it's good to hear. It's thank you for clarifying why you're all working, like together but separately. What I want to know is what can the average person like? Because I think the idea of having apps and more like digital resources for kayak trips is really good. Like I have a number of guidebooks on my shelf right now, and some of them have little notes in them, and some of them don't, and some of them are just completely irrelevant now or are way out of date. And I really like the idea of having these apps that tell you the water levels and what's going to be good, and with a description of the river. What can people like me do who are not technologically savvy at all to help further the progress of these apps and digital guidebooks and water level resources and things like that?
Jonathan Riddle from Scotland here. So people can, of course, calibrate things, and so we mentioned when there's dangers, people can communicate that to the relevant national governing body and to the relevant app or website. But all the gauges, those calibrations, they have to be done manually. There's no way. There's no way to do that automated. So it needs people to go to the rivers, check what the relevant environment agency gauge is saying, and then calibrate that to, is it low, is it a scrape, is it high, is it huge? So every time you go to a river, it's really important that you take a note of what the relevant gauge is saying, and then what do you think that means for as a canoeist? Is it a medium level? Is it a high level? Is it a flood level? And then feed that back to the relevant project in the country that you're in. And even do that if it's correct, to verify that the gauge is correct. That's just as important as pointing out that there's something incorrect, so that we can crowdsource it and we can get a understanding of what it means from as many different calibrations as possible.
I could add something to that.
Please do.
I would say that everybody knows their local rivers, and if you go to find some IT project that's covering your area and you don't find your local rivers in there, the ones that you know, then get hold of your project and get them to add that information in there, so that we can share it. Because by sharing your own local knowledge, you can hope that other people are doing the same thing in places that you visit, and that's how it works really. The locals know best, and you do the biggest favor to the projects when you share the knowledge that you have, in the hope that other people are doing the same.
Konstantin of Whitewater Guide here. I'd like to add something about collaboration. In Whitewater Guide, we have many exotic regions, and these regions, they don't have online gauges or even physical gauges. But the easiest thing you can do is take your phone with you on the river, and when you are putting in, take a picture of your put-in with a visible water level, water line, and then at the takeout, take another picture, or take another picture where you can see the river from a road or something like that, and post it into one of our projects, and like leave a comment. This level was high, this was medium low. It's the easiest way to calibrate rivers without gauges.
Perfect. So I think that between all your answers there, if I could just summarize a little bit, the thing that the average Joe kayaker, like I would put myself in that, like not technologically savvy average Joe,
Seth, you're not average. There's nothing average about you, Seth.
Anyway, so let's say I'm the average, reflective of the average paddler. I go kayaking. I want to help out with these IT apps and guidebooks and things. The best thing I can do is share my knowledge on when something's high or low. Ideally, if I can do that by sending pictures or other information to whoever is the app developer for my region, my global region. And if I can, help calibrate with water levels and descriptions and hazards. Is that a fair summary of kind of what we just talked about?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair summary. And if you do that, something's going to happen. As soon as you show any interest, someone's going to get on your case and ask whether you've got any friends and do they know any rivers. So it'll all come flooding down towards you if you actually look like you might offer something.
And I think that you're right. That trickle down effect is really important, and that like everyone has to do a little bit, but if everyone does a little bit, actually we could go a lot further towards having better resources for all kayakers, which I think would be really important because it would help make it easier, or have like less barriers for entry for new people coming into our sport. And I think that's really my focus, is to try and help get more people involved and excited about kayaking, and we can remove as many of those barriers to entry as possible. And if one of the barriers to entry is like getting information about what rivers to go to and when to go to them, I think that's really great and really useful. And in this area of Canada, I think it's a bit underused right now. There's not, or to my knowledge, there's not any good projects happening like what you guys are doing in Europe. I don't know who wants to come in on this, but do you think Europe is just further ahead on this because you have more people who are involved in IT and paddle sports, or do you think it's more ahead because it's like just kind of denser and more close together?
Got more gauges and more density, I think. So it just seems like a natural thing for us to try out. That would be my guess.
I was also wondering about because I tried to connect the different projects. I was looking around where are projects, and I was a little bit puzzled, or it felt from looking from Europe, it felt like there is less projects in the US. And then I found it especially interesting because the Silicon Valley and like computer stuff normally comes from the US, but probably it is because the social media. Because social media also maybe was there a little bit earlier, so there was a bigger shift to there as well.
Well, there.
So
sorry, I'm going to cut across you guys now. There is an app, and before I upset everyone who listens in America, there is an American Whitewater app, which American Whitewater is like not the governing body, but they're like an advocacy group, especially in the US for river access. And they do have an app which is kind of similar to your guys' projects in that it has a map with like levels, and it's linked to some of the gauges, especially in the US, is linked to USGS gauges. So there is some information about when rivers are high or low and what's going to be good or not. But I know, at least for Eastern Canada, there's not, it covers some rivers, but it doesn't cover all the things we have. And there used to be a really good project called Quebec Whitewater, which I don't know what the situation is with it right now. But, stuff does exist. And, the Americans are not, it just seems like there's not as many people contributing to this American Whitewater app as what you guys have going on over there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course, there is also like the first really big thing in the US, or maybe was worldwide, one of the first big things was Motor Talk. And then there is dreamflows.com, which also is a gauges website and forum, etc. And there is a few things, but just like I didn't find that many. And also so far I didn't get any of the American projects to get into our group.
I think we've had some contact with Dreamflows.
Yes, we do. That's Chris Shackleton.
I have a comment too.
Well, I think that's if anyone's listening and they're in America or they're in Canada and they're a part of one of these projects or the American Whitewater Project, how do they get in touch with you? What's the best way to help link them to you and collaborate some information?
I think also a difference with the US versus the number of projects in Europe is, with my paddling buddies in the US, we always just reference the American Whitewater, and that has pretty full coverage of the whole, the whole country. Whereas here, I think you see a lot more of this pop-up of the particular, in Scotland, we've got Where's the Water, and then the Alps. We have Tim working on the river map, and then Italy with the river zone. So I think these kind of popped up more country based. Whereas I don't know.
It's possibly a language thing.
Oh, maybe that could also be some artifact of that as well. Whereas that kind of had full coverage, so I don't know many people who are questioning another need for another app, but I think they also could use more, maybe refreshing or more ideas or more comments like we see that need here too.
Guys, I would just like to add something. This is Mike from Whitewater Guide. First of all, for Canada, there is not nothing, right? The Quebec Whitewater is alive, and it's they have a paid subscription, and it works. And we came up with a Whitewater Guide for Quebec. We have 200 sections, so I think it works pretty nice. It's just very new since last year, so people don't know about it that much. But if anybody from Northeast US and Quebec is listening, that this is a great app to use there. And also the Western Canada has the liquid lore and the BC Whitewater, and also the Whitewater Guide. So it doesn't look like there are way less startups, sites, or information on the US and Canada.
Okay, I stand completely corrected. I appreciate your input there. I wasn't aware that Quebec Whitewater had a new thing up and going. Like a few years ago, it used to be really good, and then I kind of hadn't used it for a bit. But that's good news. Good news for us out here. I think we've kind of talked about all the things I wanted to talk about how people can help with these projects, and what the best way for the everyday paddler to help out and to give these little pieces of knowledge, information. And I do think that's going to be valuable for us as a community and help remove those barriers to entry for people coming in. So I had a couple of asinine questions that I don't know if you guys will be able to help me out with, but I'm really interested in if self-driving cars are ever going to be able to do shuttle. And I don't know if you guys know anything about that. Some programming things, like will I be able to just set my car to pick me up at the takeout one day?
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Let's thought about it, but find it brilliant.
Okay, that's great. That's the next one I had is, what about a drone could pick me up at the takeout?
Oh yeah. That's like always my dream. I wouldn't go for a drone, but for a airship, like a Zeppelin. You could sleep in it overnight, and it drops you up in the next morning at the next put-in and picks you up by the takeout. Yeah, that's my dream.
Okay, well, one day.
Drone goes down the river and we stay at home.
One day. Well, I think that's kind of all the things I wanted to talk about in this discussion. Is there anything anyone wants to add in before we kind of sign off and let people get back to their COVID-19 lockdowns?
Yeah, we've got the Scottish announcement, which is
Okay.
the Scottish Whitewater book, which is, in my humble opinion, the best book out there of any country, 380 river runs. We're putting that into Mike and Konstantin's Whitewater Guide app. So the book works great, but some people want to be able to integrate that with the gauges and with their smartphone. And using Whitewater Guide app, we will be launching that in the next day or so, available to everybody as a premium edition, which costs £10, which is half the price of the book. And I advocate that everybody give it a try.
I have to hop in here and tell you that the last time I kayaked in Scotland was probably in 2010. And I had a physical copy of, I think, the second edition of Scottish Whitewater Guide, and it was exactly correct. Every put in, every takeout of every river I did, which was very pleasing and made my Scotland trip very good. So second, I'm sure the new version is just as good and just as accurate, and I'm excited to see a calibrated version with the app there. Great. I don't really have anything else to add here, so I think we'll let people get back to COVID-19 misery and hope this has brought some light to their day. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for taking part, and I will see you in a future podcast.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.